Hi, thanks for joining me in the Listen Up Girl podcast. I'm bringing you your LGBTQ plus news for Thursday, August the 6th. I'm your host, Zach Reynolds-Friedman. We have 6 stories today, so let's get right into it. The first story, the quiet purge. So we're starting serious. New reporting says transgender service members who refuse to voluntarily leave the military under the Orange Convicted Felons ban are now facing closed-door separation hearings. And lawyers representing them are calling it, quote, a public humiliation ritual. One Army Reserve attorney who's represented nearly 30 of these cases put it bluntly. Going in, she had hoped, she was being paranoid, and that the outcomes weren't predetermined. She said it turned out to be much worse than she thought. Service members are reportedly being excluded from their own hearings if they refuse to present as their sex assigned at birth. Many people can be barred from the room while their own careers are being decided. All this traces back to January 2025 executive order banning trans people from the military service altogether, on the argument that having a gender identity that doesn't match your sex assigned at birth undermines troops' readiness and unit cohesion. Courts have gone back and forth on this all year. An appeals court even ruled part of the ban unconstitutional back in June. But the Supreme Court let the administration start enforcing it anyway while the legal fights continue. So right now, today, people who served with distinction, who met every single standard asked of them, are sitting in rooms where the verdict was written before they walked in. I'll keep bringing you more details as we get this, but this case is far from over. Our next story is the bone density myth debunked. So some actual science, because we love a receipts moment. A new study out in the Journal of JMA Pediatrics just took a bat to one of the most repeated talking points against gender-affirming care. They claim that puberty blockers wreck kids' bones. Opponents love to bring that up because adolescence is where humans build most of their lifelong bone mass. So it sounds alarming on face. But the study found that reality is a lot less dramatic. Trans minors on puberty blockers experience only a modest and uncertain loss in bone density, and it partially recovers once they start gender-affirming hormone treatment. Even better, kids who use blockers for shorter stretches or who started them later actually had higher bone density than expected. So the won't someone think of their bones argument just got peer-reviewed hit. Next time it comes up at a dinner party, you know exactly which study to cite. Our next story is, he said this out loud on purpose. I need you to sit down for this one. At the American First Policy Institute Summit this week, the Orange Convicted Felon said that if he coached a women's basketball team, he'd ask NBA legend LeBron James to transition so his team could dominate. His exact words, I'd love to be the greatest women basketball player coach in history. I'd go up to LeBron James. I'd say, LeBron, did you ever have any desire to be a woman? Because what I'd love to do is to have you star in my team. I will have the greatest team in history. They will never lose. Nobody will come within 70 points of this team. He said, trying to mock trans athletes. What he actually did was announce out loud in public that he genuinely believes cisgender men would happily transition to dominate women's sports, which is not a thing that has happened, considering there is not one openly transgender player currently in the entire WNBA. And it got better. Moments later, ranting about puberty blockers for kids, he admitted, quote, neither do I. By the way, meaning he does not know what a puberty blocker is, while actively pushing laws about them. Not my words, his on camera at a podium. Is anyone surprised? He doesn't know what he's saying half the time. So there's no way anybody should be surprised. Next, Brittney and Cherelle Griner are getting a divorce. This is one that stings a little. Brittney has filed for divorce from her wife, Cherelle, after 8 years of marriage, calling the relationship, quote, broken. Court records show that they separated on July 24th. If the name Cherelle doesn't ring a bell, let me remind you, she's the one who spent nearly 300 days publicly pressuring the Biden administration to get Brittney home after she was detained in Russia prison back in 2022. Their story was, by every account, the emotional center of a documentary about Brittney's ordeal that came out this past January. They've been raising a 2-year-old son together, and Brittney is seeking joint custody legally. No public statement yet from either of them beyond the filing. Sending them both peace as this plays out. Our fifth story is the other California candidate everyone's watching. So switching gears to an election story that's actually encouraging, Xavier Becerra, former California Attorney General, former U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services, and now a candidate for California governor, is putting his LGBTQ plus record front and center of his campaign against the Republican Steve Hilton. He's branding himself as the health care governor, running on keeping California a sanctuary for trans youth and their families, fighting so-called forced outing policies in school that require teachers to tell parents about a student's pronoun changes, and expanding PrEP access as part of the state's global end to HIV epidemic by 2030. Equality California has already endorsed him, calling him someone who backs up rhetoric with action. He currently is polling ahead of Hilton, but nobody in the race is calling it decided. If you're anywhere near California, or you just want to see what a genuinely pro-equality gubernatorial platform looks like on paper, this is the race worth following closely between now and November. Next story, and our final story, is the quote of the week, and finally, the palate cleaner. Though cleanser might be generous, Fox host Laura Ingraham went on a rant this week warning that Democratic socialists want, quote, forced security for all except their own friends and cronies, and the plan on, quote, taking a wrecking ball to the constitutional structures that give them a chance to tell their noxious views. The problem is, she said all of that with a completely straight face while describing almost word for word what critics say her own side has been doing in office. People online had a field day. One post just said, "Oh my gosh, she said this out loud," and it took off from there. Someone else called it editorial and projection. Someone else asked sincerely, "Is she talking about the Republicans?" The self-awareness was not in the building that day. So that's your show for today. 6 stories, no filler, all the news you actually need. If any of these got a reaction out of you, that's great. That means you're paying attention. Hit subscribe, drop a rating, leave a review, and send this to one friend who actually doesn't believe any of this is happening. I'll be back tomorrow with more LGBTQ+ news. Thanks for listening.